It's time to talk more NFL draft on Prime Sports Network, the Ourlads Football Network. Just in case you were wondering what the OFN is on the helmet, I think it's pretty obvious. And that's also a little indicator of where to check out at ourlads.com. Go to the top, you see a little OFN, click that, and then you'll find out where to check out all of our videos on the Ourlads Football Network. But what you also want to do, of course, is check out the Ourlads Draft Hub. Combination of the two is what you're going to get here on all of our programs and the content from Mr. Dave Syvertsen. How's it going, Dave?
How's it going, Greg?
It could be better. My bank account I can make it back a little bit because I do like the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I've heard they were already a dog. I'm a little bit surprised they were an underdog, but it kind of blows. But it is what it is. I'm glad I'm not Joseph Aside this morning.
I was going to say, he's probably not you're not going to be buying his jersey this afternoon.
The combination of how many times I had to endure 15-yard New York Jet penalties this year and how it killed them. Matter of fact, they lost the New England game because of one. And They had a couple other games where it kind of blew their momentum. And then I had to kind of end this game on one of them. So I could do without the 15-yard penalties from teams that I'm either rooting for as a fan or financially. Hopefully that's it. Next year I'll get all the breaks on the 15-yard penalties. You know how it works. But this is Draft Talk.
That's how it works.
Yes, it is how it works.
We're back to Draft Talk.
This is Draft Talk, and we want to also let everybody know out there, the viewers who have been doing a great job of commenting on our videos, keep up the good work. Let us know, because I want to remind everybody out there, these are early previews. So we have a lot of work to do in continuing our research. So when we talk about players and give analysis here and there, it's early. And in the next 2 months, we're going to have, our opinions are going to change. Our opinions, now Dave, I don't know how much our opinions are going to change, but they're going to change quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important that, and by the way, I love the comments too, because diehard fans who watch the games more than we do, it is important to find out what they think and what they feel. Not that they're always right, but sometimes they're right. And no matter whether they're right or wrong, it gives us, hey, wait a second, aha moment. Let me double check. Let me now find out if there's something that they know that we don't.
Yeah. No, the opinions change weekly. Every time I talk to the guys that I work for over at Ourlads, when we're talking about top 10s, top 15s, we always say everything is fluid for a lot of reasons. We're still catching up on some tape.
Yes.
And I can say that on the pro personnel side as well. Yep. Like I said last time we met, I'm still doing my deep dive on the defensive guys. I mean, I'm still in the area of evaluation where you can see big swings, right? I think once we get into February, I pretty much had things locked in. You might see a couple of moves stack-wise, but, if you want a numerical example, I could have a guy that's, 15th ranked at his position right now. He might be 5th at the end of this process, right? I think the discussion that we're having right now should be viewed as a broad perspective more than something that's very specific.
Yeah, and I think just as much as your opinion is going to change on scouting players, the opinion will also change, of course, like you said, once we get caught up not only on tape on players, but also on how players did in the NFL this past season and how that is going to help us to grade them more individually, because it's great to have tools like Pro Football Focus. It's great to have all sorts of other tools at our disposal, or any other sites that you go to. There's other really good stat sites out there in the NFL. You use them as tools, especially during the season when you just don't have the time. You can't cover 32 teams.
Right.
But then when you can cover 32 teams right now during the offseason, that's when you're able to go, all right, well, that might have been their opinion, but I see a little bit differently.
Right. Yeah, and I would say I do my deep dive on prospects first, and then my deep dive on NFL teams comes end of February, early March. Once I'm done really watching and grinding the tape for the draft, that's when two things have happened, right? There's a lot of you can go back and watch all the tape, playoffs included if you need to, but also at that point you're getting a clear picture on what teams are doing with their roster. So it kind of solidifies what team needs are actually going to be. It can also there are a lot of telltale signs you can read between the lines with what general managers and coaches say, especially after new ones get hired, in terms of how they view the players. That always matters as well. So yeah, like right now it's kind of more macro perspective, and the micro perspective will be here in another month or two.
There are, besides free agency, like you said, there's coaching changes, head coaching changes, coordinator changes, it might be scheme changes. So there's a lot to go on, and we can just do our best, and just felt this was a great opportunity for us to do this again, just to get our early perspective on things before free agency, because there are a couple of teams I was looking at that we're going to talk about today, because today it's teams 19 through 32. So we round out the other two reports that we did. The first one was teams 1 through 8. Then we did teams 9 through 18. And again, remember, this is in the order in which they finished prior to any trades that they would have made outside of the draft. So that means this year there's only 31 teams. Keep that in mind in the first round, because Miami has forfeited their pick. So that doesn't go anywhere. So it's just 31, and then you go starting over again, 1, 2, and so forth. But we start with Tampa Bay today, and this is a team that is all about, as we know, Tom Brady and the decision on where he's going, what he's doing. You get the feeling he's not going to be there. I think that is either retired or elsewhere. I think pretty much people feel that way. And if that's the case, then it's pretty obvious what their number one need is. So what do you think Tampa Bay does? Because they do have still, some veterans on the team, offensively and defensively. I don't know if they're ready for a rebuild. I don't know if they're ready to bring in a first-round quarterback and stick him in there and see what he can do. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is a franchise? See, I think they should go ahead if you want, sign a veteran, start him week 1, great. But they've got to invest at some point in this draft on a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Trask has been there for 2 years now. He's thrown 9 career passes. Don't want to use that against him, but even coming out of Florida, I know he was a second rounder. That was a little rich for me when he did come out. It's hard for us to say how much confidence that front office, how much that confidence that coaching staff has in him. And I believe they haven't hired the next OC yet, right? I think that's still kind of up in the air.
As far as I know.
So that's going to be – that can determine what kind of player they want back there. Do they want a pure pocket passer? Do they want someone more mobile? I mean, let's not forget, this was by far the worst running team in football. They were dead last in basically every single important metric when it came to running the football.
And maybe that's part of why Leftwich was fired, because, I mean, you got a 46-year-old quarterback and you're throwing the ball like the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, right. There was definitely a disconnect between Brady and Leftwich. I never felt that way about Brady and Arians. I felt like they were on the same page, even though, they're kind of two cooks in the kitchen there, kind of butting heads. I think they had that mutual understanding of how they were going to score points. I never felt that way with Brady and Leftwich. So you're left with nothing at quarterback if Brady leaves. And what kind of offense do you want to run? Their financial situation is interesting to me. They have guys locked up for a long time, and they're getting paid in, I would say, 2023, 2024, 2025. Guys like Shaquille Barrett, Chris Godwin, they have some big payday. They're going to have to pay Tristan Wirfs coming up in another year or two.
Mike Evans, they're going to have to decide what to do with Mike Evans.
Levante David's a free agent.
Their offensive tackle, Smith.
Yep.
Devin
He's
White.
entering a contract year. Yep.
Shaq Mason.
So
we can go on and on.
What do you this is probably one of the more complicated situations to figure out when you start bringing in the finances. So what are you doing? What are the options at quarterback when you're picking at this point in the draft? I mean, do you take a project quarterback like an Anthony Richardson right away and just give the keys to Blaine Gabbert / Kyle Trask and just say, hey, if we stink this year, we stink. but the roster is solid. It is a solid roster on both sides of the ball. They're playing in the NFC South, which was just won with 8 wins, right? It would be hard for them to say, let's blow this thing up and start trading guys, start releasing guys, set up our cap for the future. But I don't see a way out at quarterback. I just don't know what to do here. So if we were going to stick this with the draft and assuming Brady leaves, I think this is a spot you could get away with bringing in a project quarterback early on.
That's what I think they should do. I think they should spend that first round draft pick on one of those guys, the Richardson types, and then go ahead and sign a veteran quarterback as insurance, because you don't want to play the first rounder since he's going to be a project. And maybe you give Trask an opportunity to win the job, because I'm not saying to go out and get a Derek Carr. I'm just saying get another veteran guy that can compete. And I think a guy like even a Mike White makes sense. Bring in a guy like that, you know,
absolutely,
and give him an opportunity. Because again, I do believe they should start a mini rebuild. I really do. And that means trade what you can trade, let guys go that you need to let go. That includes Levante David. I think it's time to let Levante, he wants to go somewhere else to win a Super Bowl. Let him go.
Yeah, the Bucs had the most expensive linebacker group in the NFL last year. And what did it really do for them? I agree with you. Levante David needs a Bobby Wagner type move, just somewhere fresh, somewhere new. He still has enough in him. Go to a Super Bowl contender like Wagner did. Rams obviously had the bad year, but that was more because of injuries than anything. They'll be back in the mix next year. I can see Levante David following that same path. And a hole that I see on the team that was exposed this year, they have no depth on the offensive line. In 2021, so last year, not this past season, their offensive line played 88% of the snaps together. Okay, there was 4 teams in the NFL that were above 50%. And then all of a sudden that luck ran out. Right? They lose Marpet to retirement. They lose Kappa in free agency, and then Ryan Jensen goes down with that preseason injury. So the entire middle of that line, it just was ravaged, which contributed to the running game issues. And Tom Brady's issues passing the ball were a lot because of pressure. And then you get Tristan Wirfs. He went down eventually. And that exposed a huge issue on that team. They don't have any offensive line depth, and it will need to be addressed.
On offense, again, quarterback is the no-brainer. Like you said, offensive line depth has to be number one, besides maybe even some more wide receiver depth. But defensively, they've got to do something about the defensive backfield, because they've got a bunch of guys that they have to decide who's leaving and who can we afford to bring back. I mean, we got Edwards, Ryan, Neal, Murphy Bunting, Dean. These are all free agents, and they have no money. Yeah. So that's some serious issues. And look how much it hurt their pass rushing when Shaq Barrett went down. They just didn't have much. So I would say, though, if I was thinking of the number one position, depending on what they do with the signing of the DBs, I still think maybe they need to get some more help along the defensive line. Some more young defensive linemen to flank Vita Vea. Some high talent guys up front. And I know it's a 3-4, but it's still something that they have to consider. They got a lot of needs. This is not. We talked kind of about this with the Saints, another South Division team. A lot of needs, bad cap issues. Who knows how it's going to all fall out? But we'll find out, obviously, through free agency, way before we have to have our final draft show on the Bucs.
Yep.
All right. Next up is Seattle. Now, we didn't talk about Seattle, of course, initially at number 5, because that's not how we're doing this. Instead, we talked about Denver. But Seattle in good position, because they have 2 first-round draft picks now, including the 5th pick of the draft. That's pretty awesome. And they've got good cap space. So this is a really good situation for John Schneider to kind of rebuild. And they already did a good job last year. Good draft, good start. Now if they can follow that up with a second, this is how you can rebuild your franchise real quickly, is have that second consecutive banner offseason. You do that, and you're back to where you need to be. I still have believed all along, and still to this day, that Geno Smith is coming back. They've got the cap space. I know they want him. There's no reason for me to believe that they're going to go anywhere else. I know there are a lot of people who believe because they have the 2 picks in the first round that they're going to use one of those picks on a quarterback. I don't definitely see that at 5. Maybe if they want to trade down from 20 and get an extra pick and maybe use one on a quarterback, fine. I have no problem with that. But this is a team, though, that still has some key issues on defense that they have to fix. And on offense, I think the number one issue is I think they really have to figure out what to do at center. I think they need a major. They did a really good job with the tackles last year. Now go get yourself a really good impact center. It's not going to be in the first round, though. How long do they need to wait to get if they were going to be the first team to draft a center, where would that be? Would that be in the second or third round?
Considering where they are in the second round, that's probably where I think you could first see one go.
Late second round, what you mean?
Late second round is the earliest I could see one. I've graded my top 4 centers so far, and I have a third round grade on all. So let's just assume that they have a higher outlook than me on them. That would be the highest. It wouldn't be round 1. It wouldn't even be a trade up into the second round. I think the best value for center is round 3 and round 4.
Okay.
Who ends up there, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what, they hit home runs with their offensive line picks last year. To find 2 rookie tackles that are week 1 starters and stay there all year and play at a pretty good level, that's what they were missing under Russell Wilson for so long, right? That if they do, I agree, if they get that one last piece inside, you're talking about an offense that can really truly stand on the running game, and that's what Carroll wants. And that's another reason why I don't think they've always gone bargain shopping at quarterback. And partially, hey, it's just worked out. The other part of that is their system is best run through the running game. And the Kenneth Walker pick last year, a strong offensive line, that is what will get you there.
Yeah, and then again, on defense, that's really, in my mind, where they have to. I wouldn't be surprised if they spent both of their first-round draft picks on defense. They need more help up front on the D-line as it is. Al Woods isn't getting any younger, even at nose tackle. So I think at least one of those 2 picks on the defensive line. And then even though Woolen and Bryant Bryant was a nice little quiet addition as well. But they need another guy. They still need another corner. So could you see that as well, like maybe a corner in the first round?
Again, based on this team's history, I would see they're probably
because of the bargain. Because you're okay.
Yeah, they're going to be. They find tools. Okay. They've done this for so long.
Well, give me a bargain.
So many guys.
Give me a bargain. Seahawk, lengthy mid-round corner.
Mekhi Garner from LSU might be a little too big for the outside. He might even turn into a safety. He's weighing in at around 215 right now, but he's 6'2". He's physical. Eli Ricks is a name that keeps coming up. We've talked about him from Alabama. He did not have a good year. He almost went back. Now he's coming out. The tools he's dripping in them. Just never really caught his flow in the transfer from LSU to Alabama. He looks like a Seahawk-type corner to me. Jalen Jones from Texas A&M, another big kid, might not run that well, but he's got length and he knows how to use his size.
Okay.
That sounds like a Seahawk to me. Those are a few kind of like mid-round picks, round 3, round 4, that I could see going.
All right, and what about slot? Because I don't know, even if they bring him back on the cheap, and they could afford him, Marquise Goodwin. The fact is that D. Eskridge so far hasn't worked out. So
Agreed.
What do you think? Do you think they should maybe they just re-sign Goodwin on the cheap and give Eskridge another year of development, and then they don't have to worry necessarily about the slot, even though they could still use another body at receiver because there's such a pass wide receiver type offense. I mean, as much as Fant is an interesting addition at tight end, Geno doesn't really like throwing to his tight ends. He likes throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, there's definitely room for a receiver on this team. And I would say one of 2 things would fit into this piece of the puzzle, this missing piece of the puzzle is an outside guy that can play slot or a slot that can play outside, because they do like to put Lockett
Yes.
at the slot. He's not
So an
primarily outside.
interchangeable receiver.
Yes, and those guys can be hard to find. And based on who I've seen do it at the college level, that I think would kind of work out well in the NFL is Marvin Mims from Oklahoma.
Okay.
Uh, just a really efficient mover, has some of the Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson type movement traits to his lower body. Not the same caliber prospect. If you want to go a little later round, Charlie Jones from Purdue.
Oh yeah.
Um, just exploded onto the scene. Transfer from Iowa to Purdue. He'll be at the Senior Bowl next week. Just a guy that I know can line up in both spots. If they want to go slot only, I love Josh Downs from North Carolina. Just excellent route runner, runs himself open, catches everything, tough after the catch. Those are guys that fit into that system well, but also kind of give you the flexibility that they want to have with Lockett, which is what makes him so good.
As far as other free agents, they have to decide what to do with Penny. And I think with his injury history, nobody's gonna pay him much. He'll probably get $1 million, maybe a couple million if he's lucky. So
Yeah, a
I
prove it
I
deal.
think they just bring him back. Why not? You know?
Yeah, and his injury was a broken leg, if I remember correctly, right? We're not talking about anything ligament or tendon.
I don't recall it being anything major. So
yeah, so they love rotating running backs there. I think Kenneth Walker is definitely RB1.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they love to have a deep backfield. That's another staple of the Carroll system.
And I like DJ Dallas, but it's time to move on from Travis Homer. He gets too many touches. I mean, he's too small. He's just, I don't know what they're doing there. So bring in, even if you resign Penny, bring in another running back, because it's redundant. You have Dallas. You don't need Homer. You just don't need him. So
bring some fresh blood in there. Yep, I agree.
And Myers also has to be resigned, so we'll see what they do there. They've got to also sign a couple of DBs and, again, center. As we talked about. So that could definitely be the direction they go early. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's now talk about the LA Chargers. And Chargers at 21. Boy, it's amazing that Tom Telesco has been the GM for the Chargers going on his 11th year. Wow. You would think that they would have some sort of like tremendous history in 11 years. He has got to be the luckiest 11-year GM I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
He's had some good moments, but I mean, but that's because of the way the organization's run. You know, they just, there's not like the leadership just isn't there. But look, they got poor cap space issues. You got to keep an eye on that. And then they had some really tough injuries that they had to overcome. They had the Slater kid early on with the bicep injury, and then their big-time corner that they signed, J.C. Jackson, went down at mid-season. So they had a couple of those injuries that really hurt them. And, of course, let's keep in mind they also had the injury to Bosa, so he really didn't even hardly play. And they still almost made it to the second round of the playoffs. Right. So we know the talent's there. As far as the major needs, I don't think there's any question. They still have to do something about more offensive linemen. Pipkins is a free agent, so fine, let him go. I mean, I don't even know what they would even, unless, pay him $1 million, but he's not somebody that you really need to rely on. So maybe go out and get another right tackle. And then on defense, again, they've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. It's got to be defensive line, inside linebacker, one of the two or both, run-stopping talent. That's what they need. They need the combination of defensive line, inside linebacker, run-stopping players. And maybe even that's what they do with the first few picks.
Yeah, I mean, every year we're talking about the same thing with this team, is beef up the interior of the defensive line, find a better inside linebacker, and, change up your scheme a little bit. I mean, sometimes when I watch these guys play, it's almost like they just don't care that they're opening up doors for the running game to run through. Is it a schematic thing? Is it a personnel thing? I don't think their personnel is terrible up front, but there's a disconnect there between what they need to be and what they are. But that still, to me, remains the top need on the roster. Is as long as you keep putting up run defense numbers that the Chargers are, that's always going to be my answer, because it might not hurt you in the regular season as often or as much. But if you are a leaky run defense, especially in the middle, you're never going to go deep into the
Yeah.
playoffs. It just
Yeah,
won't
it's too
happen.
easy. Yeah,
So
it's where every defense begins, right
right,
in the
right,
middle. All right,
yeah,
so look, Joseph Day at nose tackle is a nice little player. They did spend a 5th-round pick last year on the kid from UCLA. So do you think that they're okay there? If we're picking what they need to do, if they had to choose first round, do we pick an inside linebacker, which usually is not the way to go in the first round,
right.
or do we go with a defensive lineman? Because again, that's the thing. Inside linebacker, nose tackle anyway, not usually going in the first round. So
Right.
does that kind of answer my question? Did they just go defensive line, best defensive lineman? What do you think?
That would be the best move in my opinion, partially because of they rotate their defensive linemen a lot when the backups come in, second string, whatever you want to call them. It's a pretty significant drop off. But also, I think it would help the pass rush because I'm nervous about Bosa. I'm always nervous about whether or not he's going to stay on the field for the entire season. And if they have a different option inside that can take some pressure off him, it makes sense to kind of go there. But I don't want this pass rush specialist. It can't be a guy that's just a pass rusher. He's got to play some solid run defense as
I
well.
mean, they
So
can sign one of those guys if they want for a year.
they
Yeah,
could. Yep.
but you're
Somebody
right.
will shake free for
Yeah.
that role.
All
Yep.
right. So who would we be talking about? If we're talking about a 3-4 defensive lineman, who would we be at around 21? What do you think? What kind of player are we talking about?
I mean, Brian Breesy might be there from
You think
Clemson.
so?
I still think he might be. He's still, in my opinion, like that's his best role. 3-4 defensive end. You could shift him
I think
inside
that'd
a
be a
certain
steal
zone.
if they can get him at 21.
Yeah, it would be a good deal. I mean, the opinions on him are just by the way, they're all over the
Okay.
place. Some are saying top 10, some are saying second
Okay.
round. So as of right now, and I've felt this way about him watching his tape. Now that that's where I'm starting my deep dive is up front. There's a lot of sloppiness to his game. He's got a very non-traditional body for the defensive tackle position. Leverage is poor. There are some issues in his game that if he doesn't fix, he will not be a factor. I mean, the get off is only going to get you so far when you're rushing the passer. I love the kid from USC. I keep bringing him up. Tuli Tuipulotu. 21 might be a little rich for him. I view him as more of like a top of the second round type.
Okay.
But talk about a guy that I'm saying, hey, someone that can make tackles in the backfield, rush the passer, line up in multiple spots. That's the guy. Morgan Fox is a free agent, plays the 3-4 DN role for them. I think that's an automatic transition for them. That if they just made that simple trade with those two, I think they come out on the stronger side.
Yeah, they got 3 defensive linemen right now, free agents, including Fox, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. By the way, don't want to forget also, Sawyer did a really good job as a 6th-round draft pick. I thought that was a
Yeah.
steal anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
so they got lucky there. But even if they feel he can slide into one of the spots, they still have to. It doesn't mean that they're done at tackle. So they still have to get
I
another
agree.
guy. And I think that's also when you take a look at the offensive line, when you had the Slater injury and you're starting a rookie, and I think Lindsley's done a nice job, but you're starting another. They actually started 2 rookies most of the season because Zion Johnson's there as well. So there was a lot of. There's too many changes up front.
Yeah.
No cohesion.
Growing pains too.
Yeah. And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Look, I understand. I thought the idea was a smart one, using a 4th-round draft pick on a running back last year. The player I wasn't happy with. I just was not a big Isaiah Spiller fan coming into the draft, and nothing that he showed me last year changed my mind. I think they have got to find an impact running back to pair with Eckler like they had with Gordon. And then I think you got yourself the makings of a really dangerous offense, because when you take that out of the equation, it's just Eckler, and then throw in the fact that they weren't healthy at receiver, that's another aspect of their offense. Do you think they decide, this is something for the Charger fans out there, do you think maybe they move on from Keenan Allen?
for financial
for
reasons.
financial reasons, because if you
Very
look at it,
possible.
what is his contract situation is he's got 15.5 and 18 million in the next 2 years. And the dead money is not that bad. It's 7 and a little under 3. That's not that bad. So do
Right.
you move
And
on?
consider those numbers and consider the fact that he's played 10 games this year. A couple years ago he missed
Yes.
2. I mean, he was an Iron Man basically from 2017 to 2019, but then you start approaching age 30 you're a year away from that. He starts to slow down a little bit. I mean, he's effective when he's on the
Sure.
field, but when you consider the economic value of a contract, if you're afraid he's not going to be able to stay on the field at this point as a 31-year-old next year, that's a hefty price to pay. And like you said, that dead money is not something that would scare me away from doing
And
it.
the same thing, in my opinion, with Khalil Mack, because again, here's the thing with and I don't know what the consensus is with the fans. Let me know. But you look at, like, Pro Football Focus loves the guy, but I'm telling you, I watch all these Charger games and I never hear his name. He doesn't do anything. It's like C.J. Mosley with the Jets. It's like, I don't want my big prized linebacker making plays behind the line, after the player has passed the line of scrimmage. I want, especially Khalil Mack, I want sacks. I want tackles for loss. I want pressures. And I just don't see that from him anymore. He's not, those stats have gone away the last couple of years. And I'm not going to pay a guy that's 31 years old, 17 million for the next 2 years. His dead cap space is, again, not that bad at 9 this year and 4.5 the next. So I'd have to think really long and hard about both Khalil Mack and Keenan Allen and maybe say, you know what? Maybe it's time for us to use that money wisely and get younger. We're not rebuilding, but I just think that maybe if they keep these guys, they're thinking, well, we can win a Super Bowl next year. And I just don't know if they can win a Super Bowl next year. So if I think in Super Bowl in 2 years, then I'm thinking I'm moving on from those guys.
Right. No, I mean, Chicago knew what they were doing in trading him. And it wasn't just because of the current level of play. It was just the economics. The contract's out of control, right? And I mean, he's one bad injury away from being a 32-year-old with a bad wheel, right? I mean, it's the name Khalil Mack just doesn't. You got to make sure it doesn't suck you in too much based on the fact that he was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2016. It doesn't matter anymore. I think what he did 2 years ago doesn't matter anymore. So I agree that these high-priced players that are swallowing up a bunch of cat on a team that has a lot of depth-related issues, right? That's one thing about paying big money. We see them with the Rams to a few players. You can't build a deep team when you're playing multiple guys, top money, and their biggest expense is coming up. I mean, Herbert's going to be due for a contract soon. So
and Eckler.
I think
Eckler's got to get paid too.
The sooner you cut bait with Mack, the better.
All right, so I think. Oh, by the way, also in the secondary, keep in mind they do have to re-sign Callahan. So if they don't, then they might have a nickel job that could be open. So that's also something to keep in mind. All right, let's now move on to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens, and rightly so. They get a lot of praise as far as how they run the organization. Even now that DeCosta's there, year 5, they seem to know what they're doing. And every year in the draft, it's like Pittsburgh. Every year in the draft, they're able to sit where they are and let players come to them. And this past year, they were able to hit it with Kyle Hamilton. Let Kyle Hamilton come to us. And even though Tyler Linderbaum didn't fit the scheme at Baltimore, because Baltimore, there was talk about Baltimore always looking for power centers. They went ahead and took the best center prospect that's been around in like 5 or 6 years. Damn the scheme, and it worked out. So they know what they're doing, and looking about what they need to do to complete the whole deal is, again, going to come down, of course, to what they do with Lamar Jackson. And I wonder whether or not the Greg Roman move is just like that sign there that, well, okay, Lamar Jackson's not coming back? Or is it more of
Right.
we've got to find another coordinator to get Lamar Jackson over the hump? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, who has more leverage here in this interesting quarterback contract dilemma? Is it Lamar Jackson, who can simply say, "You guys can't score without me on the field," or is it the Ravens, who look at Lamar and say, "You're an athlete quarterback that's had 2 knee injuries in the past 2 years, and for us to rely on you to win games and stay on the field, it's a questionable decision when you're talking about like big time contracts and guaranteed money." So that's going to really be the interesting conversation. I would love to be able to fly on the room in those negotiations because I think both sides think they have the leverage, incredibly so. But what ends up happening? I mean, it sounds like he already turned down a very sizable deal. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it was approaching 45 mil a year. And do we really think he's going to be getting Mahomes type money? I don't think he
No.
should because he won an MVP a
What's
few
the
years
what's the
ago. I
quarterback
mean,
tag for?
the quarterback tag is around 32. I mean, the question will he play on that? Will there create drama? I mean, I think that's always a nice fallback option is that franchise tag. Um, but that's I have a hard time. I go back and forth myself. Who has more leverage? Because the Ravens' offense without Lamar is garbage.
I can't even believe unless there's something about the contract offer that didn't do much after the first year or two that he would turn down $45 million a year. That doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
Who does he think he is? I mean, what?
Right.
No, it had to
Yeah.
be. And I'll talk again. We said this before. I'll definitely bring in Tony Lombardi. Does a great job covering the Ravens. I'll have him on at some point as well in the coming weeks to talk about what is really going on there. But that's the
Yeah.
offseason for Baltimore, obviously. And I wonder what that coordinator move really means. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and then you have to fix the rest of the team too. I mean, I think that's one thing that the front office they're in a tough spot right now because that decision is so big for a lot of reasons. The biggest one being financial, but this is a team that again I would call them an AFC contender, not the same level as the top teams, but they can be up there if they can stay healthy. Their defensive backfield has let them down a couple of years in a row now, and a couple of their better players are now free agents.
Yes.
So Marcus Peters, Kyle Fuller, they're both heading towards free agency. Yep. What's the plan there?
Do you believe? Are you confident Demarion Williams can man one of those spots?
Who?
Demarion Williams, their fourth rounder from last year.
I would love if he was like my top backup, maybe nickel. I know Hamilton's playing their nickel role technically. I don't know if he was my starter, I would feel okay about it, but I would still be searching for something better the next year.
Okay.
If that answers that question.
Absolutely. So, no question. You have to add an impact corner. Yeah.
Right. And it's just an aggressive style of defense that they play. And when you have an aggressive style of defense, it's fine, but you need to have guys that can cover on an island by themselves. And that's where they just got roasted on these come from behind losses last year.
Yeah, if you look at it, when you spend 2 fourth rounders a corner like they did last year, what that says to me is we're taking care of our depth. So now what they need to do now, look, Marlon Humphrey is a very solid number 1 corner.
Yeah.
But what do? Like you said, do they move on from Peters and Fuller? Do they re-sign one of them? If they re-sign both of them, then I don't know. Does that tell me that they're not going to do a thing a corner in the draft?
I mean,
probably.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah.
So if they don't,
I wouldn't feel good about that. I just, I think Peters is a little cooked right now. I think Fuller, same thing. I think they're kind of former names that are still carrying some clout.
And Fuller's coming off the injury too.
Right. I don't know if I want to put a pot of chips on the table for them.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Fuller is the way to go because he'll be cheaper. Bring him back at a minimum and then move on from Peters because Peters will get it. Somebody will pay him.
Somebody pay him.
So let Peters go somewhere and then use potentially your first round pick on a corner. And what about the defensive line now? They got to get a little bit younger. I mean, Campbell just keeps playing at a good level, but the guy eventually is going to wear down. And then,
Yeah.
Jason Pierre-Paul has already worn down. Houston is a free agent as an edge rusher. So that's, even though you have a Jabo and Owe hasn't really shown much yet, but these were projects, Jabo and Owe.
Yeah.
I still think they probably need to add another edge rusher too, because that's how their defense runs, and that's how they get their impact, is from the old days when they had this great 3-4 edge rushers, and right now they don't have that, especially when these old guys aren't really producing much at this stage of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the catch with gambling on athletes with high upside on the edge, right? And sometimes it works, but you're just talking about a bigger margin between success and failure. And if they don't reach that potential, Ojabo and Owe, you're looking at a huge gaping hole on a spot that's vital for that scheme. So I think they're getting some help inside. Matabuke had a really good year. He broke out this past season, Z tackle. I love Travis Jones as their future nose tackle. I think, but I agree they need like a younger version of Calais Campbell, a guy that could 3-4 DN that can rush the passer and penetrate. So there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of hopefuls, right? There's a lot of hope with some of these young guys on that defensive front, but you also have to pair hope with the fact that they might not be good enough, and you need to have a backup plan now. You don't want to be scrambling at this time next year.
Yeah, because Urban's a free agent. Campbell and Pierce are not getting any younger. So if they did go edge rusher, which would not be a surprise, they do spend early on defense in the draft. So if they go edge rusher with pick number 22, who could that be?
If they're going to go edge rusher at 22, okay, so you're probably looking at, will Tyree Wilson be there from Texas Tech? I think he'd be a great fit, but I don't think he'll be there. Luke Van Ness from Iowa. Starting to get my feet wet on him.
Luke Van Ness. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely tools rich. I think he's going to be working out a little bit better than what people initially perceive. Like, I think he's going to have some freaky numbers, J.J. Watt type numbers, type body frame. If they want more speed off the edge, this is the first spot I could see Nolan Smith going from Georgia. If they just want another pure burner off the edge, that again, we've talked about him. He's not going to be very big. He's going to measure in around 240 pounds. And they've played that game with Tyrus Bowser a little bit. He's given them a couple flashes here and there, but nothing to write home about. But Nolan Smith is on a different level of speed explosion.
I like it.
If they like that kind of speed off the side and they'll compromise size, he could be that guy in 22.
And on offense, no matter what they do at quarterback, the injuries killed them, because they just started to pay attention to wide receiver last year. Well, the last couple of years. And Duvernay started to make progress, develop. Bateman was on his second year, and I'm going to be a number one. And they both go down. And it showed just how depleted this receiving unit was as far as depth. So they are they've got to bring in either a veteran and or a draft pick. They have to add 2 impact-type players at wide receiver.
Yeah, just since 2019, the amount of money that this team has spent on wide receiver has ranked 27th, 28th, 22nd, and 32nd in the NFL.
And is that because of Lamar Jackson? Because of the style of play? We're a running team, and we're going to run the ball. We're going to pass the ball to our tight ends. Is that the reason?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it from that perspective. I think that they just downplayed the need for receiver. I think that they kind of overrated their own guys and said, we can get this done with Sammy Watkins off the street, right?
They used to, who is it? When they had Steve Smith.
Right.
At his later, who was the other guy that got from Florida State?
Was it Mike Wallace?
Bolden. Didn't they get some of these guys that they were like these one, like they didn't, even when they were winning Super Bowls, they always had like that one veteran presence guy.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of like you're saying, maybe they just fall back on that because it's the same guys pretty much running the organization.
Yeah, a name that I love, if he does shake free, we just talked about him. If the Chargers end up releasing Keenan Allen, I think that would be like the exact presence
there you
this
go.
offense could use,
exactly.
like underneath, intermediate. They traded away Marquise Brown to Arizona, and they really last year, right? And they really didn't do anything to replace him. And he was like the one guy. I'm not a huge Marquise Brown guy, I never have been, but he did create that vertical threat that opened things out underneath. They need something like that back on this team, a true, credible vertical threat. Whether you're going to spend an early pick on someone or you're going to go try to grab someone in free agency, again, this is where the Lamar Jackson situation is going to come in and dictate a lot of how they approach that.
All right, and they also have to maybe add another running back to the mix too, because the injuries and it's just Gus Edwards is just a nice compliment guy, but overall they could probably use like a number one compliment to Dobbins, maybe like a power runner like
Yep.
Edwards, but
Yep.
a little younger or
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more sturdy at this point.
Right. Yeah. This whole running back group for the past few years has just been like, I think they probably have more time off the field than on the field. And it might be time to kind of wipe that slate clean. But, who's calling the plays? What kind of offense are they going to be running? Who's playing quarterback? That's why I said Lamar, he holds the keys to the bus right now. They got to figure this thing out for the sake of the rest of the roster.
All right. Minnesota looking for a new coordinator. We still don't know who their defensive coordinator is, right? So that's what we were talking about at the beginning. Since we don't know who their coordinator is, that could change a lot of things. They're a 3-4 defense right, as of right now. As far as their overall talent, too, does it look like the way they're set up that the next guy that comes in on defense needs to be a 3-4 guy?
That's a good question. I don't think they need to be a 3-4 team because some of their 3-4 defensive line talent are free agents. I think it's time to cut loose some of these linebackers that are in that system, so you can kind of wipe the slate clean and start over with your new front. They can. Kendricks, like him as a role player, like him as a leader in the locker room. He does not have what he used to athletically.
Yeah, they can actually move on because he only has $2 million in dead cap space.
Yeah, I would say that's a move that I expect to happen. Not that I think could happen. Harrison Smith, even again, another guy I've loved watching over the past few years. Dalvin Tomlinson is a guy that I think comes. He's a free agent this year. I think he's gone for good. My biggest issue with this team, and I thought the Vikings were the most overrated team in football. Negative point differential despite winning 12 games. We talked recently about just fortunes reversing, right? Good luck, bad luck, kind of changing back and forth. Their record in one-score games, I think they were 11-0, something like that. Or
they were very good at it, yes. And they played in a lot of close games the last couple of years.
Right, and that has a way of evening itself back out. So, this is a team I struggle to see where the direction is. The Kirk Cousins, he'll be their guy for at least another year. I would say at least probably more likely than 2. Dalvin Cook is now on the back nine of his career, and the top backup, Madison, is now a free agent. It's tough. Garrett Bradbury, the center, he didn't pan out. I don't think they picked up his.
Well, he actually did have his best year.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they still believe in him moving forward, that's open.
I mean, my latest exposure to him was that wild card loss to the Giants, where there are certain things he just can't do. Yeah. He can't handle the big physical pass rushers. And there's some give and take with the athletic ability that he brings to the table. But, it's just they have a lot of their best players are also their oldest.
Like you said, it could be let's just move on.
Yeah, build around Justin
good players
Jefferson.
Maybe, but even good or overpriced or whatever, older. It's time for us to move on.
They're Patrick Peterson, their top corner. He's now a free agent. He's up there in age now. Do they really want to pay him?
We can't repay him at 33 years old.
No. So it's a weird situation. As I was writing these guys up, I mean, they've put a lot of resources into the cornerback group. 7 draft picks between 2018 and 2022, and you're looking at this group right now and saying, "Hey, we might need 2 of them next year."
You know what I mean, Cordy? Yep. I mean, and look, it's unfortunate that 2 of their top picks last year got hurt.
Right.
And look, Booth. That was always going to be you were gambling a little bit, and that's why he didn't go in the first round. And then lo and behold, he's got the knee surgery, and it's the same old knee issue, and now you can't really count on him. No. And then Scene gets injured, and he's out for the season. So you
Yep.
have two key pieces. So at least what that does going into this year is, okay, we get these guys back. That's good. But, Shelley's a free agent and Sullivan's a free agent. And as you mentioned, Peterson's a free agent. So,
Yeah.
and maybe Harrison Smith, like you said, maybe they decide what to do there. Probably. I think maybe they just try to restructure Harrison Smith's contract.
Yep.
I could see, unless Harrison Smith wants to go somewhere the last year or two to try to
Right.
win a Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting situation to watch. I feel like there's potentially, especially year 2 of this regime, right? Minnesota had a new front office, new head coach last year. I think we might be in line to see a lot of personnel movement on this roster.
Yeah, you're right. Because the second year for the GM,
Yep.
and is it time? Is it too early, or is it time to use up one of your third, fourth round picks on a quarterback?
I would take one if I was the Vikings. I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins guy. I just don't think you're going to get past this ceiling with him. And again, you might be able to make the playoffs, get hot at the right time, but I think it's time to start thinking past Kirk Cousins, especially considering what you're going to have to pay Justin Jefferson soon.
And let me ask you: Would you even go the route of saying, all right, maybe we're going to have Cousins for 2 more years? This is the perfect spot for a guy like Richardson.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Richardson going anywhere where he's definitely not going to play right away. So if he's available at this spot, absolutely, I think it'd be a good pick, and kind of like just a notice to Kirk Cousins that his time is up if he doesn't get further into the playoffs next year.
All right. Other than that, though, there really isn't. Would you say their number one need is probably a number one corner?
Yep.
Okay.
Number one corner. Bradbury, I would like to see a new center there. Just don't think it's worked out. And I think they need to start planning for Dalvin Cook being done soon, or Alexander Madison playing somewhere else and having that second back right behind him ready to go.
What do you think about the possibility of giving Chandler that opportunity this year to be the number 2 and see if he could, maybe be a part of their 1-2 future?
Love it, because I like Chandler coming out. Still not sure if he's going to be big and physical enough, but again, the opportunity should be there. Would I put all of my eggs in that basket? No.
Yeah, no.
Like I would probably bring another day 3 pick in. As we know, day 3 picks can be found at that position every single year. And if a spot opens up, I would like to see Chandler compete with someone for that job rather than just give it to him.
Yeah, at this point, there are just so many other needs, though, that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
What are they exactly going to do? And we'll know more. Again, we're going to know more about what they're going to do once free agency's over. Okay, Next up is Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, another team with poor cap space, and they have to figure out what to do with some important players, especially at tight end. So what do you do with Evan Ingram? Because their top 3 tight ends are all free agents. But Ingram's the big one. He got the 1-year show me deal, and he did his part. He's not an elite tight end, but we know how much Doug Peterson values the position. So as long as I guess he doesn't ask for some crazy contract, you got to try to bring him back. So, but again, when you're $20 million under the cap, Jacksonville's got to, they got to make some room.
Yeah. If I'm Evan Ingram, I don't want to leave. And if that means I have to give a little bit of a discount to stay with Trevor Lawrence, who I think is on the brink of becoming the next one in the NFL. I think he's this close. I think it's going to be Burrow and Mahomes at the top of the league for a while. I think they're going to be the next Brady Manning. But that tier right underneath them, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, if we believe in him yet, I think that Lawrence is going to be in that tier next year. And if I'm Evan Ingram, who just got done playing in the hell of New York with the Giants, all right, he's got to stay. But if they don't get him back for whatever reason, the agent gets greedy, or maybe Jacksonville doesn't want him back, that turns into the biggest need on the team.
And does that turn into our boy from Utah?
Could be Kincaid, or that could be Meyer ends up too. Peterson, the profile of a tight end, I was surprised last year that he went after Ingram, because the Peterson profile at tight end has a little bit more size and physical presence.
So more like Meyer
game.
then.
Right, exactly. That's where I think Meyer probably fits their mold a little bit better.
Okay.
But also, don't forget about on this offense, they have Calvin Ridley coming back next year at
Good
receiver.
point.
So you're just I mean, he's going to be raw, he's going to be rusty, but if he gets back to 90% of what he was, we're talking about a pretty deep passing game that if you want to give a little at tight end to bring in a body like Meyer or even Darnell Washington, don't sleep on him. It improves the running game and improves some of the issues that they've had on the offensive line.
Which is still something they're going to have to figure out because Taylor
Yeah.
is now a free agent. So whether or
Yep.
not, some team is going to pay him that the Jags aren't going to
Oh, for sure.
afford. So
Yep.
that means you've got to upgrade at both. Well, look, they did draft Little a couple years ago. So
Little will be the guy there. Yeah.
So you'll have Little and Cam Robinson.
Yep.
And then
They just won't have any depth.
And now you need depth. So you need that number 3 tackle, but you definitely also need to upgrade left guard, and you need to get a little younger at guard too, because if you take a look at Brandon Scherf, it's starting to kind of,
it is.
You're going to need his eventual. So definitely offensive line to me right now on offense is still their primary need.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If you can cross off tight end for now, I mean, I'm big on get the line first. So, you could make the argument that the offensive line does need to be fixed before tight end. But, like I said, Brandon Scherf, he's a name that sometimes people have that programmed in their head from 4 years ago when he was an all-pro that this guy's a stud. He's no longer that stud. So now you're talking about 2 guards playing on either side of a center that I was not impressed with this year. That, we've seen at Tampa Bay that if you're not strong in the middle of the line, it's going to ruin your passing game. And if you're truly going to support Trevor Lawrence and truly catapult him to being an elite quarterback, that group's got to be better.
So no matter what, then, what you would think then, based on this evaluation, is that if they were going to use a first-round pick on the offensive line, it should be a guard.
Yeah. Or it could even be a tackle convert.
Who could that be?
There's a few of them. I mean, a tackle that converts to guard, he's not a first rounder, but I love Cody Mauch from North Dakota State. Keep an eye on him at the Senior Bowl next year. No, that's a guy that I think could be
the Senior Bowl next year.
Sorry, next week. Sorry, next week. Yeah. Keep an eye on him next week. Yeah. He's a tackle at North Dakota State. I think he's someone that comes in and plays guard and could play early on in his career. There's even a couple of tackles that I'm grading on the brink of round 1, round 2, where the Jacksonville's picking in round 1 might be a little rich, that I think I see a guard skill set in. Jalen Duncan from Maryland, who got roasted in pass protection this past year, but people still like him because there are movement traits and size traits that scream NFL. He does have enough quality tape to be projected as a starter at the next level.
First round?
And it would be rich. I would probably call it a reach if he's being picked at this spot. But if they find themselves trading back or wanting to trade up to the top of the second round, it'd be a great spot for him to go. Jalen Duncan, and sit behind those guys for a year or two and compete for a starting job maybe towards the end of the year.
All right, well, straight up guard. Who's the top guard prospect? And how many guards do you think might get drafted in the first round?
Just one. I mean, I think there's one interior guy that goes in round 1. It's Osiris Torrance from Florida, the big meaty guy from Florida.
No, where about in the first round?
I would say I would start it right around 24, 25. Jacksonville.
A local kid.
The Giants, yes. Keep him down in Florida.
Yeah, even though he came from Louisiana, right?
Louisiana, yeah.
But still, 1 year in Jacksonville, and then he stays in Jacksonville.
Yeah, why not?
All right, that's interesting. Defensively, they've got a couple of free agents on the defensive line, the backups, Peters and Gotsis. Furakasi hasn't really worked out so well for some reason since he's been there, so that's an issue. So defensive line, I would put that as like a top need on defense, and then safety because I think they should cut Jenkins because Jenkins is 2 more years. 15-5 combined, 7-5 and 8, and his dead space is only 4 and 2. Mm-hmm. He's overrated. They need the cap space. There you go. You re-sign Wingard, and you put him in with Cisco, and then maybe you draft another safety.
I like that. I like that move. I think Cisco's a stud. I think he's going to be a very good pro. Look, got off to a little bit of a slow start. I say that because I'm just impatient. But this year he started to show what he can be, and Wingard is a perfect complement to his play style. And I agree. I love the approach of going after safety a little bit later in the draft. The defensive line definitely needs work, like you said. I love Davon Hamilton in the middle,
Yeah.
but the two ends and their 3-4 front, the D tackles. They were just put on ice skates against the run. Their run defense was bad.
Well, look,
And
I don't know exactly how Fadokasi's working into this defense because maybe that's the reason why he's not playing well. With the Jets, he was just nose tackle. I'm here to stop the run. That's all I'm here for. So if they're moving him around on the defensive line, maybe that's part of the reason he isn't playing all that well. Maybe he's out of position.
It could be. It absolutely could be. And, does that automatically make this team cut him loose and just say, hey, you're not a fit? Or do they
Maybe.
do what the Giants did? They switched up where they put Dexter Lawrence alignment-wise, and he becomes a second-team All-Pro.
Yeah, put him where he belonged. Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see.
So we'll see there. Yeah, I think they definitely need some more help on the defensive line because that division, if you can't stop the run, it's going to make life
That's
difficult.
True. And also, edge rushers, they do have to re-sign two guys, Smoot and Key. Key had a nice year, so he kind of played well there. So they could use another edge guy unless they re-sign the veterans. I can't imagine those guys are going to cost much. But look, they're expecting a breakout, of course, from Trevon Walker. To go along with Josh Allen. So it's not like they're jonesing for edge rushers, but they need some depth.
You're right.
So.
Yep, need some depth. Yep.
All right, that's Jacksonville. Now let's move on to the New York Giants. And the Giants coming off a playoff season. A lot of that had to do with being in the NFC, but they took advantage of it. And Brian Daboll did a phenomenal job, not only coaching the team, but also coaching up Daniel Jones and putting him in position to use his athleticism, which I just kept crying for the Giants' former coaches to do. That you just have got to live and die, sort of like Lamar Jackson's, and you got to live and die with the fact that he's going to run the football, and if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. You're not going to make Lamar Jackson into a pocket passer, and you're not going to win with Daniel Jones as a pocket passer either. He has to run the football, and that's what he did. And now the question is going to be, now they have good cap space, so do you think they just tag one guy, preferably the running back because it's a cheaper number, and then just figure out a way to re-sign Daniel Jones to because come on, is Daniel Jones going to ask for money that the Giants can't afford? If so, he'd be crazy, especially you just talked about. Why would you want to leave Brian Daboll? He just changed your career.
He did.
So wouldn't you just be like, okay, I'll work it out with you guys. Well, yeah. I can work on a contract here.
Yeah, I mean, number one thought, I agree. He'd be crazy to leave Daboll and go into somewhere, anywhere else right now. The quarterback market is hungry right now, though. That's the one reason why I can see the price tag being a little bit higher than what some are anticipating.
It takes one crazy general manager.
Yep, and there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
If I was advising both sides without a bias, I would recommend a 3-year deal with about 2/3 of it guaranteed, and you can pay him top 12 money in the NFL, considering the cap does move every year, so it won't be top 12 at the end. And it basically would give Jones another 2 years in this organization. And if he is still playing on the same level or elevating even higher, now as a 28-year-old, he gets to sign a long.
Now you get your big contract.
His big contract, right? And it ensures that he's in this system. And I believe in this front office.
Yes.
More than the previous, that they will put the pieces around him that he needs to succeed. I really think there's a plan there. And I think their plan this offseason will be to find a vertical threat for the passing game. Because they don't have anything there.
Nothing.
They
have Wan'Dale Robinson. That's it, really.
Yeah,
and look, the other guys did a nice job, and they're nice little role players, and they're all free agents.
Right.
But yeah, they need a true number one.
They need just someone that can, what Kenny Golladay was supposed to be is someone that just kind of takes the top off the defense and puts attention. Because I do think Jones, his best passing is short to intermediate, but it gets really crowded in there if you don't have that over-the-top threat. It could be the draft. It's probably more economical to do that in the first or second round. And then,
Well, if they did spend a first-round draft pick on a player like that, who would it be?
well, if you're looking at the vertical threat,
Yep.
okay, I think that Zay Flowers is one of them, although I don't know if they want another undersized receiver because they already have one in Wan'Dale Robinson.
True.
This might be a little rich right now, but I think if he goes and blows up the combine and has a couple good workouts, Jalen Hyatt is a name to keep an eye on.
Okay.
What he was doing in the SEC, who he was running by.
Yeah.
There's limited exposure to his tape. He just did not play a lot in college, but he might be a legitimate 4.25 receiver. And if he goes out there and runs that kind of speed and shows that the ball skills are there, I mean, that can change an offense. I'm comparing him to a healthy Will Fuller. If you remember what the Texans' offense was like when Watson and Fuller were hitting on point, it changed everything. So that's where the Giants, it would be a smart move for them to make a move like that for the sake of Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and then because I'll tell you what, if one of those two players somehow slips out of the Giants' grasp, I know there's a team down south in Atlanta that would like to take advantage of either player.
You're absolutely right. If Barkley hits the market, I'm probably going to put money on him going to Atlanta.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I have a feeling the Giants will be able to keep both of those players, and so therefore they also have to. By the way, they need some more depth behind Barkley too.
Yeah,
they got nothing behind him, so they need some depth behind him. We know the receiver, and they also have to upgrade the center position. So maybe they end up the first team to pick the center, some second round, third round. They absolutely need a pivot. There's just no question about it.
Yeah, you could make the case they need two interior linemen. The outside, they're going to have to roll with Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. Whether you like Evan Neal or not, rough year, they're going to have to roll with him for at least another season, and he deserves that. You got to let him try. Evan Neal, the right tackle.
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
I'm just saying the outside is locked in. That's all I'm saying there. There's some chatter with Giants fans that they should move Evan Neal. Absolutely not. You got to give him another year at tackle.
Move him? Oh, what, inside the guard?
Yeah.
Oh. What about the kid from North Carolina? They invested, a third-round pick on last year?
Yeah, as they do. He started a few games. They rotated him in a lot, and then he suffered a neck injury and then came back too soon from that injury and re-aggravated it. Now they're calling that injury something is long-term revolving around it. So we'll see there. But I agree, the center spot has been a sore spot for the Giants offense for a long time. It sounds like it's a broken record, like the Chargers and their defensive tackles. Was Feliciano bad? No, but bad. The bar has been set so low with the Giants that someone that is even just halfway average is now viewed as too high. I don't think the Giants fans really truly realize how big of an impact a good center could make on that line.
And defensively, they have their top linebackers are free agents, so they have to decide. Not that they could just let them go, Jalen Smith and Gerard Davis. And I think Micah McFadden, he could develop into one of those two guys. So maybe go out and draft one linebacker or sign one of these two, and then that's fine. But they also have to do the cornerback spot. I know Jackson had a nice year for them. Flott actually looked pretty good for them as a rookie, but that's all they have, really. I don't think you can count on any of the other players at corner. And I also think they're pretty set at safety, especially with they drafted Belton last year. So do you agree with me that they need to add at least one, if not two, especially maybe even a nickel corner to the mix?
Yeah, I mean, Darnay Holmes will be back next year. Nick McLeod Nick McLeod played the corner nickel spot this year, and the other outside spot is definitely a hole because when Jackson went down with his knee injury, I think he missed 6 or 7 games. It was very slim pickings on both sides. And if Wink Martindale stays in New York, I know he's interviewing again with the Colts, but if he stays
for the head coaching job?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That is a vital component to his ideal defense is having 2 outside corners that can play on an island. and Jackson can do it. They're paying him to do it. Another first round corner is in the cards. I think the Giants offense is so far behind right now what the defense is putting out there, but if a value is there
Yeah.
in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that resource be spent on that.
Yeah. And because but if they lose oh boy, that would be huge if they lost Martindale. Huge.
Yeah. That would be a big thing.
Big blow.
That defense has a culture now for the first time in a long time. They have a nucleus up front. If they lose Wink Martindale, it's gonna be a rough go.
Yeah, that's but it is a head coaching job, and nothing you can do about it. So, hey, if the Colts are smart, based on the other contenders that they're talking to, they hire him.
He wants to be a head coach. I know that.
Then they should hire him. I've seen the other contenders. Yeah, I don't like him.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So Martindale deserves a shot, and I think that'd be a perfect opportunity there. All right, stay in the division, go to the Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And with the Dallas Cowboys, cap space, not it's okay, it's average, nothing to worry about. But this is a team, and there's a couple of them that we're going to talk about here that I really can't. Maybe you could do a better job, but I can't really get too much into what they're going to need in the draft until free agency is over, because are they going to re-sign Pollard? You would think yes. If they do, they should be fine there. Are they going to re-sign Schultz? I don't think so, because they have Ferguson, but we'll see. Are they going to re-sign Brown? If they don't, they need another receiver. Overall, too, I just think that offensively it might be a good idea to add another more competition at center, because that kid just hasn't really worked out for them. He's just a player. And they also have to keep in mind that Tyron Smith and Zach Martin are starting to get older. Mm-hmm. And so that's also something on the offensive line that they have to consider. So if I had to guess, I think they let Schultz go, because I could see Schultz getting a pretty good offer, and I think that they can live without him. But the other thing is what do they do at quarterback? Cooper Rush is a free agent. So do you just bring Rush back on the cheap and then just have him as the veteran number 2, but you also go out and sort of like what we talked about with Kirk Cousins, do you also go out and think about a future quarterback?
That after that playoff loss, I think the answer's got to be you have to start going that direction and find your next Dak. Dak was a 4th rounder, right? And then he kind of, I think he got his first opportunity because of injury. Was it Romo? Was it that long ago?
Yes, I believe it was.
So, and it worked out. I mean, from that perspective, I know he's being paid big money right now, but a 4th rounder doing what Dak does, a huge success story, right? But now there's a different level of expectations put on you when you're being paid what he's being paid, for a lot of reasons. One of them, you just can't spend on the team as much as you used to. He's taking up a hefty percentage of what they're allowed to spend. So,
and they're stuck with him like Kirk Cousins for 2 more years.
Right. There's other areas of the offense that need to be addressed before you go and draft a 2nd, 3rd, 4th round quarterback.
So would you wait 1 more year before doing that then, a quarterback?
I would, because I think their window is it's right now.
So that means that you got to do more on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Because that's really when Dak was at his best, when he had the elite offensive line in front of him. Yeah. And then also a little bit on defense. Maybe, I don't know. To me, the defense, I think the biggest issue might be on the interior of the defensive line. What do you think? And they also have a lot of other free agents also on that side of the ball. They've got Donovan Wilson as a free agent. You've got to decide what to do with Anthony Brown at corner. You got the linebackers, Barr and Van Der Esch, are free agents. You got 2 defensive tackle rotation players are free agents. This is a very hard team to pick what they're going to do with the draft until free agency's done.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we'll circle back on. This is definitely a team you're going to want to watch. 2 things to keep an eye on, or 2 players to keep an eye on that could dictate some of their spending. For multiple years in a row, tackle Tyron Smith and running back Ezekiel Elliott were both restructured. Basically, the team restructured their contracts so they could spend more in that current offseason, and they pushed the spending. They kind of just kicked the can down the road, as they say. They didn't do it this past year. And for now a year, right? Almost a year. I've been kind of thinking that they're going to be cut loose this year.
Who?
Tyron Smith and Zeke.
Both of them.
Just both of them. Because of the money that's coming their way, the lack of production that they're coming on the table, and because they have the replacements on the roster. Tyler Smith,
yeah, that's one of them.
a lot of penalties, but he played a good left tackle
Yes.
for a rookie out of Tulsa. Pollard, the injury, a little concerning, but again, it seems like it's something that won't affect his offseason training that much. It's not a ligament, it wasn't soft tissue. It was a clean break. He's the best running back on that team. There's no question. Yeah. There's no, every Zeke fan would say the same thing. So now you're paying. I mean, they had the second most expensive running back room in the NFL. And is that real value? It's not, especially when the guy that's making less money is the better player. So, I mean, Pollard's got to be resigned. They're going to sign him to a deal. I don't think you could have both of those contracts on the roster at the same time. But what this can do is open up the door to spend elsewhere on the roster. I think they need another receiver. But what I don't know, and I don't think anyone outside that room knows, what is Jalen Tolbert, the third-round pick from South Alabama? I mean, a lot of us thought he was going to be one of their main receivers this year, and he barely saw the field, got hurt.
Maybe he needs a year.
Didn't pick up the playbook. So maybe he just needed that year. Maybe he is that guy. But, they know the answer. I thought T.Y. Hilton, other than Lamb, after they picked up T.Y. Hilton, I thought he was their second best receiver. An in-season pickup.
Do you think that Gallup's injury is the main reason why he just didn't show anything this year?
I don't know. He's been an inconsistent, maddening, polarizing receiver his entire career. He's got all the talent in the world. I remember when he came out, I think it was 2018, he was my number one receiver in that draft class. It was a weaker than normal class, but he's got that ability.
Yeah, he does.
It's just everything is inconsistent about his game. And if you really want to put the best system around Dak Prescott, like you said, you got to build up the running game, which is probably going to stem from the offensive line being a little bit stronger.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
I think he needs another receiver. I really do. Whether it's a slot or, and if Tolbert does work out, then hey, now it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and so do you think, again, it all depends on what they do with free agency, but do you think the defense, what you saw in just even the San Francisco game, do you think the defense is good enough?
I do.
Okay, so really, your main issue is, and which is strange though in a way, because the offense for like 2 months was like scoring in the 30s and the 40s, Yet it's still a problem.
Their ceiling is always high every year. When their best football every year, like their offense is up there with the best offenses in the NFL, and I mean that. But it sounds like I just read that Mike McCarthy is going to be calling the plays next
I guess
year.
we know what that means to Moore. I guess he's gone.
Yeah, I think he's already interviewing somewhere else. I forget where it was, but I do think I saw his name pop up on the ticker where he's interviewing somewhere else. That's why I do feel good about Dallas in terms of their potential to get over the hump because of the defense. It's a much more stable group than it used to be. They have some interesting young players that I think can be very good in year two. Deron Bland, the corner, DN Sam Williams, linebacker Damone Clark. Yep. I'm high on all three of those guys, and putting them on the field with maybe one of the 2 or 3 best football players in the NFL and Michael Parsons, I think they can get it done on that side of the ball.
And they also need a new place kicker.
Yep. Oh man.
All right.
That was unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, it's undervalued position until you need it, right? Until you need that big kick. All right, Buffalo Bills. All right, so Bills fans are getting a little antsy here. They haven't been able to close the door two seasons in a row to get to the Super Bowl. Matter of fact, they haven't even been able to get to the championship game the last 2 years. What's up with that? So
man, you're rubbing salt in that wound.
So they're trying. So they're blaming. From what I'm hearing, there's blame on the coaching staff. Maybe we need another coach, but that's not our job here. Our job here is to figure out what they do need to do in order to accomplish that talent-wise. Look, they have a good foundation with Bean. It's his general manager, so he knows what he's doing. But I do agree with some of the fans, because I've actually been questioning this myself the past couple of years, and we just talked about it. They've got to put more balance in the offense. You can't just have Allen throwing the ball and running the ball all the time. I mean, it's too much. You got to.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what they're going to do with Singletary. So do they resign? And see, if they resign Singletary, then that's just bringing back the same guys at running back. And
Yeah.
because should they think early in the draft, first round, second round, third round, of drafting like they did with Cook, getting another impact running back in that backfield and trying to emphasize a little bit more of the running game. And that also means to improve that offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my number one need for this team is up front on the offensive line. Not everyone will agree with that, but Allen was sacked 33 times this year. That's the most since 2019. The Spencer Brown experiment at right tackle, I'll raise my hand. I liked him. I had first-round grade on him coming out of Northern Iowa. He has not looked very good. Deion Dawkins, look, I mean, if he's my left tackle, I'm okay with it, but I need to have a lot of talent around him to feel good about it, and they don't. Saffold, left guard, I think his best days are done. Yeah. He's done. He's a free agent anyway. I don't think he'll be back. So you're looking at multiple holes on an offense that wants to throw the ball as much as without a power run game. It won't work. You know, I think this is the result you're going to see year after year unless they address it. And this is a team where I could say this would be a great fit for the guard from Florida, Torrance. You know, but you need to embrace that brand of football. Yeah. And you're a team in Buffalo, like you could almost guarantee you're going to be playing in you know, the kind of weather that
Didn't
you
they
need
just
a
learn their
game.
lesson in the snow game?
Right. You know, so I'm definitely on board with using one of the picks on a running back. Does it have to be an early one?
Not necessarily.
It does not.
No.
But it needs to be a specific kind of running back that can offset what James Cook is bringing to the table. A power in between the tackles, put your nose down, blue-collar runner.
Give me one of those guys rounds 2 through 4.
Eric Gray from Oklahoma is one of them. And I like Kendre Miller from TCU. I actually think that would be a really good fit schematically and just with what they already have in that backfield. One of those two guys, Eric Gray or Kendre Miller. If they want to go day 3, I mean, I think there's going to be better talent rounds 5 through 7 for that role and just more economic talent, I should say. Roshan Johnson from Texas, the backup to Bijan Robinson. The league loves him. The league will love him even more. The fans will love him even more after the Senior Bowl week.
Okay.
Chase Brown from Illinois.
Yes.
I think fits into that mold. And then Kenny McIntosh from Georgia. Last one, Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky. You know, these are guys that are just like no nonsense. Put their nose down. You know they're going to get 3 yards every time.
You drafted Cook last year, so you bring in his teammate.
That would be great. You know.
So, and also keep in mind they have the free agents along the offensive line as well. And by the way, can we get an upgrade at some point, sometime from Mitch Morse? All right, seriously. I mean, he's just a guy.
Yeah,
that's all he is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the problem. They just seem to be content with just guys. You know, average guys.
Yeah, what they've done a lot of. I did a little study on this last year. They've drafted, I think, all of their interior guards, starters and backups, were college tackles.
Wow.
They were college tackles that converted to guard. And it's funny, stereotypically, I'm not going to go into every single player one by one, but stereotypically, those are guys that pass protect well, but they can't get movement off the ball.
There you go.
And I think that's one of their biggest issues. They just don't get movement off the point of attack.
That's it. So, well, look, we'll know. After the free agency of the draft, we'll know if they're changing their mind a little bit. But do you think if they don't re-sign Crowder or Beasley, should they bring in a slot receiver?
I think they're going to roll with Shakir
in the slot.
In the second year. Yeah, I do. I think that's his best spot. That's where he played in college. And Gabe Davis and Diggs, they both kind of interchange outside inside. So do they need like just a slot?
Okay.
No, they don't. But when they have all three on the field, Shakir could be the guy in the middle.
Maybe they should, if they don't re-sign Crowder and Beasley, they should just bring in a depth piece.
Yeah, a bargain piece. Yeah.
because one injury and they're in a little bit of trouble.
Yep.
So, all right. And then on defense, the safety position now becomes real all of a sudden after years of Poyer and Hyde, the best tandem pretty much in the league. Now you've got Poyer free agent, you got Hyde's a free agent next year, uh, and then you also have the Hamlin injury. So safety, if you're looking at, because I think the cornerback situation is not that bad. Maybe you can add another corner, but would you say safety? Because Elam will hopefully step up his game next year. Do you think safety is a top need for them
I think it's their top defensive need.
overall
No
on
question.
defense?
Yeah, it's their top defensive
Okay.
need, even over linebacker where they're losing Edmonds. I think they can make do. The middle of that field is
Does
thin, and I
Bernard
even
just
think
replace Edmonds? And they say, is that the reason they drafted him? You think last year for this exact
say,
reason?
yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way of putting it. But I agree. At corner, they're pretty deep between White, Teron Johnson, Dane Jackson, and then the two rookies, Benford and Elam. I know Elam was pretty up and down, but towards the end of the year, I thought he was playing
Hey, it's
some
first
of
round
his
draft
best
pick, so he
football.
better work out for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they do have to
Um,
re-sign Jackson.
right. And so I don't know about Hamlin. What is his deal physically? I mean, I think now I guess we are removed from the situation far enough now that we can say, okay, he's living, he's healthy from a
Yeah.
that
Now we can talk football.
perspective. Can he still play
Yeah.
football? I mean, if he can, like you said, losing him and Poyer in one shot, I mean that is a huge deal for that
If they
defense.
spent
And
the first round draft pick on a safety, who would we be looking at?
I mean, to offset what Hyde is bringing to the table, Antonio Johnson, that could be a good spot. He's more of a, he's versatile, which I think that team likes. Hyde and Poyer, if you remember, they were both college corners that just were a little too slow. Johnson played a lot of nickel corner at Texas A&M. Again, can't play that in the NFL, but I like the interchangeability that he brings to the table.
Do you
This
think they're going to
safety
re-sign
group,
Poyer?
I don't know what their cap situation
Right
is, to be
now, it's
honest.
not too good.
It's not too good. I think he will get a sizable offer in the market.
Okay.
So I think someone will pay to come in and kind of be like their missing piece of the secondary. So coin flip to me, he won't be back.
Yeah, he's probably
I don't
he'll
think
go somewhere where he can because he's 31, so
right.
he still has a couple more years.
I think the best value though for this safety group in particular is like round 3, round 4, round 5. And I don't know if Buffalo is going to want to draft a safety and just put him into the starting lineup right
Sure.
away. Like McDermott likes experience on the back end, so I could see them more likely trying to find a bargain in free agency, maybe like the second or third wave of free agency, and pairing him with one of these third round, fourth round safeties, like Jair Brown from Penn State, Sidney Brown from Illinois, Kayvon Merriweather from Iowa, getting those guys in the building,
Okay.
or you go try to find a corner that is a little too slow to play on the outside. I mean, they're that Jartavius Martin, we talked about him with the cornerback group from Illinois. There's Devin Weatherspoon, and then there's
Yep.
Jartavius Martin. He actually is probably the guy. If I had to pick one corner that will be a better safety in the NFL, it's probably him.
And look,
So keep an eye on it.
they have smartly early in the draft with the defense they run, they have gone after edge rushers. The problem is none of these so far. These guys are just like okay. They're like nice little
Right.
depth edge rushers, but you spend first and second round draft picks on edge rushers. One of them needs to be a top guy. One of them needs to be your
Yeah.
top dog. The top dog was Von Miller. They had to bring him
Yep.
in, and they hopefully he won't lose much because he's older. He's got coming off an injury. They have. You would think, based on their history, that edge rushing maybe at the bottom of the first round too. Is there something they have to
Yeah.
consider?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a front office that purely values positional value, right? They are big on quarterback, wide receiver, corner, and edge rushers. And if you are not happy with this group, or you had an oh shit moment when Von Miller went down, saying we just
Well,
don't
they
have anything
lost it. They
left.
didn't have anything when Von Miller went down.
Right. It's definitely a sneaky possible
So
pick for the end of the round.
4-3 edge rusher at pick 27.
I mean, this name we talked about, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, probably a good fit.
Okay.
Do they want to go back down the Iowa train? It didn't work out with Epinesa.
That's
Zach
true.
Harrison, probably a little too rich for him. There's not much. I mean, Andre Carter, who I don't have him that high, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people will, based on his upside. Reminds me a little bit of Rousseau from Miami,
Okay.
who they drafted, and he's flashed enough to say that the pick is working out so far. So those are names to keep an eye on at the end of round one.
All right. So who do we go with next? Is it San Francisco or Cincinnati?
Let's go Cincinnati.
All right.
I think they're going to be in front of San Fran.
Okay. The Bengals. It's look. You don't even need it to look at anything to know once again what their big need on offense is. They still have to figure out a way to fix the offensive line. And look, Jonah Williams has not really turned out to be the guy that they had hoped. Throwing injuries, it's not working out. Not to say that he won't be here after this year. His contract will be up. I don't know if he's restricted or not, but fact is they've got to get another tackle. That's just obvious. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at this team, you could probably live another year, with Karras at center if you have to, and you should draft Volson. He got some experience, so maybe you're okay there. And Cap is okay as well, so you're okay there. Maybe what you do is you draft a center guard type guy early enough, but the number one pick on this team, if the right guy is there, has got to be tackle. And if that's the case, what are we looking at there?
Yeah, you're looking at maybe Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse, Broderick Jones. I think he's going to be gone by that point. I mean, I think one of those two guys, as of right now, are looking at maybe credible first round grades, leaning heavier towards Anton Harrison. Reminds me of Cordy Glenn, actually, out of Georgia, played on the Bengals years ago. Similar type player.
Oh, yeah.
But just in terms of his size, his frame, doesn't bend that well, but he gets his hands on you. He's just great at mirroring. Like, that's what I think they need. A guy with a real anchor, which Jonah Williams does not have, and that can just simply mirror pass rushers. And if they do fix the left tackle spot, that changes everything on that offensive line. I think that's the piece, because you can tell that the pocket was just shrinking from that backside. It was also paired with their rookie from North Dakota State, Volson, who you have to assume will take a little bit of a jump up next year. At least you would hope that. If that side of the ball can get fixed, I think a lot changes on that offense. So this could be a team that I could see trading up.
With a lot of cap space, though, I don't know yet. Haven't dived into who's going to be potentially available, because any offensive tackle that's worth anything usually isn't available. So,
yeah, I mean, Taylor Lewan might have a good
still
shot.
Play?
I think so. I think if he can go to a contender like this and try to win a Super Bowl,
that's a good one, yeah.
But this is where it's tough to project if they should spend money to get this pick.
Oh, I think they should do both.
They're about to pay Burrow and Chase. I mean, those contracts are coming up.
But I like that approach, though, of going with a 1-year deal guy and then first round draft pick.
Yes, that would be smart. Yeah. A 1-year deal, and then hey, if the first round draft pick comes in and just absolutely starts tossing guys around left and right, find another spot for him on the line.
Yeah, Lewan can play right tackle, and Jonah Williams can move inside the guard.
Yeah, right. I mean, they need to make a change. I think we're both in agreement there. And whether it's the rookie, the veteran, both move guys around. They cannot go into next year with this same starting five. And I even think they need to beef up the depth as well.
And then at the skill positions, they do need to add one more wide receiver. Because especially when they have an injury, they just don't have any depth. I mean, Trenton Irwin is getting, and even Trent Taylor, they shouldn't be out there as much as they are.
I agree.
They got to decide what to do with Hayden Hurst. I didn't think he was a bad pickup, but I think all three of their tight ends, their top tight ends, are free agents, including Hurst.
Yeah, they are.
So that becomes, that could even be an early, second round, third round option. And like you've
Mhm.
said, it's a very good year for tight ends.
It
So
is.
just
I,
imagine Joe
I
Burrow with another weapon.
Right. I mean, I think that's what makes a lot of sense is if Hurst does leave, and this will be the second year in a
Just
row.
like you talked about, though, why would he want to leave Cincinnati with all
I
that
know,
money
I
that they have
know.
to spend? If he can't figure out
Yeah,
a way to all right, you can keep the extra 500 grand. I'll stay with the Bengals.
yeah, and it's also, what if Cincinnati wants a more dynamic threat there? That's one thing I've been thinking about. Like if they had a Travis Kelsey type athlete. All right, you're not going to go find Travis Kelsey randomly in the draft, but if you could find that kind of athlete for the position, I think it can change that passing game and just add some balance to where they throw the ball.
Sure.
Right? I mean, they're so wide receiver dependent that if they had someone that could even just make some plays after the catch, I mean, I think that can make a big difference for the offense.
And then at defense, I think they need a number one corner. Now, I don't know if
Okay.
they're going to get it in this draft, especially because they need offensive linemen. I don't know if they're going to spend money. Maybe they'll spend money. Maybe they'll go out and they'll get a guy, sign a couple of years, a James Bradbury type, bring in another guy that maybe. But fact is they can use a future number one. And again, I don't know whether or not they can do that this year with their offensive line needs. But we all know safety is just a big, big potential hole with both guys free agents. And there's a lot of talk. I remember uh, going over with our Bengal analyst earlier in the year that he just didn't believe Bates would be back after coming back this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the number one need I have for them on defense is right in the middle of that field, right in the middle of the secondary. Don't forget they did draft Dax
Yeah.
Hill in the first round
So
last
maybe
year, so
maybe
he'll be a
maybe they
part.
re-signed Bell and then they're okay.
Yeah, yeah, they complement each other pretty well. Bell's in the box, tackling safety, won't make many plays in the ball, and Dax Hill is kind of the opposite, a little bit more coverage. Thought we'd see more of him this year. I don't know if there was things he just wasn't picking up on or wasn't contributing enough in comparison to the guys in front of him. So I'm just wondering if there's something going on there. I could see a day two, early day three pick on a safety group, like I said, deeper group than I initially thought it would be when you're talking about that area of the draft.
I think it
If
might have
they
been a
want,
scheme thing though, because they use
okay,
Hilton so much
right,
that and Bates and Bell play all the time that
right,
I just don't think there was much room for Dax Hill to play, to tell
yeah,
you the truth. That's just my guess.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope for their sake, I hope that's the
Yeah,
case.
right.
Because he does. He's that kid's talented. I
Yes.
loved him at Michigan. I mean, he's as quick and as explosive and has a great feel for the ball. I trust him when the ball's in the air as well. Yeah, it could just be that just couldn't break through the depth chart in year
And they
one.
got to re-sign Pratt, so they'll be able to do that, no problem. So they're set there. But they also can use a little bit of depth, edge rusher, because
Mm-hmm.
Osai had the injury last year and hasn't shown much this year so far. So they can use that extra edge guy for depth with this 4-3 unit. And again, I think on defense, though, I think the number one need is corner
Mm-hmm.
because I don't. Why would I really want to bring back Eli Apple?
No, I
I mean, I
know.
got to
I
get
mean,
another corner. And I know, again, even if it's not first round, or like we said, use it in free agency. It's probably the
yeah,
best way to do it is go and get
yep,
yourself a free agent corner.
yep. I agree with you. I also could see a little bit of a hole at running back behind Joe Mixon. Samaj Piron's a free agent this year. Trayvon Williams, Chris Evans, haven't seen much out of them. They haven't been in the league
Yeah.
long, so maybe you give them a look at the number two job. But I think there's an opportunity to add a little bit more speed, a little bit more spark behind Joe Mixon.
All right. Now we'll talk San Francisco, the 49ers. I don't think they need a quarterback, but they sure.
Unless they want to go five deep on
Yes,
game day
yes.
now.
So it will be interesting to find out, though. It'll be a Brock Purdy and Lance contest, so that'll be nice, interesting. Jimmy G more than likely gone. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams with a need for quarterbacks that are going to try to find a way to bring Jimmy G in.
Yep.
So we take a look at their offense, and I know they got away with it this year but they have to upgrade their interior on the offensive line. They
Mm-hmm.
got manhandled yesterday like they should have because it's not very good. It's
Right.
like Trent Williams is elite, like McGlinchey's solid, and they got nothing in the middle. It was scheme and
Mm-hmm.
coaching, and they got exposed. And they have
Yep.
to do a better job in the interior, especially at center. So that's what they got to do as far, and they got to resign McGlinchey, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
that becomes
Yep.
a need, and they do have a little bit of cap space. They should be able to do it based on the numbers. Um, the other thing at offense, maybe they add a slot receiver. You think now Danny Gray was a third rounder. We didn't see much of him this year. I'm not sure what happened there, but you think a slot or just another receiver in general they could use.
Yeah, I think just another receiver in general. I think Danny Gray is going to be more of an outside type guy. He's kind of like a similar player to Ayuk, just like burst, vertical threat, make plays on the ball. Debo's kind of like, do you want to come on slot? Do you want to come on running
Yeah,
back? I don't really know what to call him.
yeah,
So, but someone behind him that when Debo is moving around, you can easily insert someone into that slot. Juwan Jennings, I believe, is a free agent. So that's just another body in this
yeah.
group that's going to be heading towards free agency. Easy to replace, in my
Yes.
opinion, other than the fact that he's probably by far the best blocking receiver in the game. Which for this offense it does matter. They do need receivers that can, a try hard and b make a physical impact as a downfield blocker. But I think the receiver room could use a little bit more love here, just to kind of add more options, basically because of what Debo Samuel does for that offense. I mean, he's all over the place, right? And you want to have easily insertable talent behind him once he starts moving around a little bit.
All right, and then on defense, as good as San Francisco's defense is, there are still some concerns. You have to resign Jimmy Ward, so that is definitely something that they're going to have to keep an eye on. They've got 3 edge rushers that they have to resign, depth guys, and I think that overall those guys are okay, but I wouldn't be surprised. Again, 4-3 front. Now Drake Jackson was a second rounder last year, so that was a smart move. But I could
Mm-hmm.
see them looking at maybe adding another edge rusher, depending on what they do in free agency. And I could see them also adding another defensive tackle.
Yeah.
They don't really have an impact force in the middle of that defense.
Right. I mean, Javon Kinlaw has not evolved into what they were hoping he would, right? And he was a little bit of a swing for the fence when he came out of South Carolina. Um, I don't want to get into any off-field issues. I'm just going to keep it to the on-field stuff. It looks like he's just not clicking mentally. Like he's not playing as fast as he is, if that makes sense. And in the NFL, you kind of get eaten up like that, especially when you play with high pad level like he does. So I think they lost when they lost DJ Jones, the D tackle, to Denver. I think it hurt their front a little bit more than they were anticipating.
Yeah. And also, if they don't sign Jimmy Ward, then they definitely need a corner.
Yeah,
Now,
I think no matter what, they got to bring a
they got
corner in.
they got to add another corner anyway.
No matter what,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's definitely a spot to keep an eye on. What do you think their number 1 overall need is though right now?
I have corner.
Corner.
I have corner, O line. So we talked about them all. I have corner, O line, D line.
Okay.
Those are the 3 spots that I think need to be addressed. And O line, to me, it could be inside or outside. To be honest with you, I don't know if McGlinchey. I'm assuming they're going to resign him.
I would think so.
But I would think so too, just because you don't have anything
No.
behind him. There's no one.
They're in
that's
big
gonna
trouble
step
if they
in for
don't
him.
resign him.
Right. I mean, he's not the best right tackle in the game, but he's serviceable.
He's serviceable.
And if you go from serviceable to nothing,
Yes.
it's gonna
Then you've got
hurt
Trent
that
Williams
offense.
and nothing.
Yes, exactly. So I would like to see at least a pick to. It could be inside or outside. Just add a little bit of depth and maybe some competition to the one of the 3 interior spots. Rookie from Texas, San Antonio, Burford. He played well enough this year as a rookie where I think he could be given that job next year, the right
one of the guard
spot.
spots. Yeah.
There needs to be a little bit more competition brought in there.
Now it's time to talk about Super Bowl teams, and we'll start off with Kansas City. So the Chiefs are going into next year. One of the things I did notice is that this is one of those years where if you can win the Super Bowl, let's win the Super Bowl because they're going to have some contract situations that they're going to have to. They may not be as talented. Let's just put it this way next year because of
Yep.
that. Especially, you got to look on the offensive line. Both tackles are free agents, including their left tackle. So I have no idea how that's going to work out. And what a great matchup it's going to be in the Super Bowl is this offensive line against that defensive line. So that's
Yep.
going to be probably what the game is won. But you got all these receivers, free agents, so they got to decide what to do with all those guys who are free agents. I mean, pretty much everybody's a free agent, and the only other guy that isn't, Valdez Scantling, and then Sky Moore hasn't done much.
Right.
So they got basically two guys on contract. So offensively, and it looks like they've got their running back one, but they could probably also use another running back. And even if they re-sign McKinnon, they could probably use another running back there. Not that they have to spend high on it. So those on offense, those are some of the things. I think if I'm picking one thing on offense as their number one, besides the obvious, if they can resign the tackles, they're fine. I tell you what, even if Brown needs to be resigned, but I think either way they got to find a right tackle. I don't think Andrew Wiley is anything, that you can feel comfortable with. But I knowing Andy Reid, I think wide receiver might end up being their number one need on offense.
You know what? I have this image in my head based on watching Mecole Hardman play and what he couldn't do with this offense. They gave him the opportunity a few times, got hurt a couple times. I see Jalen Hyatt as a guy that would be a great fit for this offense. I keep seeing it in my head. It's the vertical threat. I mean, you're never going to get Tyreek Hill back, and I credit for them that they did not try to fill his role with anybody. You're just not getting that kind of player back. I mean, and they were still fine. They're still one of the best offenses, maybe the best passing offense in the NFL. But the best passing offenses in the NFL, they work when you have someone that scares you over the top. And, Mahomes does not throw the ball deep in general. A lot of his throws are short, intermediate. But a lot of the reason why he has space to work with underneath, other than the fact that it's just the best offensive scheme and offensive coach in the NFL, in my opinion, is getting guys over the top. And I think Jalen Hyatt, this team is so good that they can do something like that. Hey, we don't maybe not need a wide receiver, but
we're rich. We're going to keep being rich.
Exactly.
And how about, who might work out well here too is Tank Dell.
Yeah, Tank Dell would be kind of like that next option. If they don't go round 1, round 2, you start looking round 3, round 4, round 5. Oh,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of those guys. Yeah, especially depending on how he runs, of course. But if he runs fast,
he'll run well.
He could be a perfect complement to this type of off. So defensively, they have 3 free agents on the interior. So no matter what, they need more defensive tackles. But they should really think about adding an upgrade next to Chris Jones because they really don't have a really top guy next to him. Mm-hmm. And then edge rusher, I'm thinking, because some of these guys are a little old. And
Frank Clark.
Clark will be a free agent after the year or so. You can think about what you want to do with him. But, yeah, I could see another edge rusher, again, a 4-3 defense, and a cornerback. You can't rely on 2 7th-rounders. So I could definitely see a cornerback early, too. Could you see a cornerback maybe even as early as the first round?
I'd be surprised because of the resources that they put into that position last year and how well they are playing.
So you like the fact that even though they're later round draft picks, you think that they're going to be okay with those guys?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, if the right value is there, I don't think the guys are good enough to overlook, perfect value. But I was talking about this last night with someone. What the Chiefs are getting out of their rookies on defense is probably the best we've seen in the entire NFL. And it's just like, how is this team now getting this, right? They have Mahomes, they have Kelsey, they have Reed. You can't beat them. And now they have these day 3 picks that are forcing turnovers against Joe Burrow in the AFC divisional round. It's amazing. But I would be a little nervous if they lost Thornhill to free agency. That's the one spot. I mean, you could insert second rounder Brian Cook, who's been playing this year. He's been playing
absolutely.
Well. But I would want to have another body in there, and I would use anything as early as the second rounder on that position for that defense at that spot.
So either way, they should add an early DB.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely the way to put it. Absolutely.
Okay. And then overall, what do you think? Overall, Would it be
I
edge rusher receiver?
man, I think I'm gonna assume they're gonna lose one of the tackles. So I think they need to
Right
insert
tackle.
another, yeah, right tackle. Why they would probably leave in
Yeah,
free
they got to
agency.
resign. They got
Yeah,
to bring back Orlando Brown. They have to.
yeah, I think they'll find a way. I mean, Mahomes' cap numbers are now going up into the 40 million numbers now, so it's hard to pay everyone the way you want to. But I think Brown will be back, and if they can draft a right tackle to compete with Lucas Niang, the third rounder from
Yeah,
TCU
he hasn't worked
in
out.
2020, that's a name. And you know what? Casey's had some success, a lot of success with drafting offensive linemen outside of round one that come in and start right away and play at a high level. I mean, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. I mean, those two guys are taking the second and sixth round respectively, and playing dominant football inside. So if they can strike gold again at right tackle, that'd be a huge get for them.
Okay. The Philadelphia Eagles will round out our early team needs for the NFL draft prior to free agency. Now we're going to do this again. Not sure if we're going to do the 30 the individuals. We might, or we might do divisions, but we will be doing this again for sure right after free agency. So keep that in mind. Late March into early April, we'll be doing our final team needs reports on all 32 teams. But we still have one more to go. The Philadelphia Eagles, favored to win the Super Bowl. And like I was saying with a few teams, including Dallas, I just think this is a huge guessing game with all of the cap, all the deals and the free agents. There's no way I could guess what they're going to do because, I mean, they voided the contracts of guys like Cox and Hargrave and Bradbury and Siamalu. They've got White at linebacker and Edwards at linebacker as free agents. They got Sanders as a free agent. They got two of their top DBs as free agents. There's just so much that this team is going to have to figure out, and I'm sure they've got the game plan to do it, that I don't know. I have no idea how it's all going to work out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at their free agency list for this year, I was just like, wait, that's almost half the
Yeah,
roster.
that's what I'm saying. Speaking
so
about, we
obviously,
better try to win the Super Bowl now while we can.
yeah, guys, because they're gonna lose. They'll lose a handful of those guys that you just talked about. There's just no way they can bring them all back.
And they're also
I know
getting
that
older up front on the defensive line.
They are. I mean, they already drafted Jason Kelsey's replacement and Cam Jurgens, so I think they're going to be okay there. I mean, Kelsey's an All-Pro. It's hard shoes to fill, but so I do think you'll see them go backwards. But personnel-wise, they're there.
By the way, speaking of an offensive line, you were saying this with Tampa Bay, I believe, about the injuries. We say it every year when we're predicting teams and we talk about things like injuries. One team, Tampa Bay, what happened to their offensive line? Didn't have the depth. They couldn't do anything.
Right.
The Eagles' offensive line, reality, they don't really have much depth. If they lost, the guys at Tampa Bay lost, they would be in trouble.
Yep.
So I think the Eagles, knowing that, I think the Eagles have got to do some depth additions on the offensive line because they were very fortunate. Again, the Super Bowl teams usually are come injuries. Right. They usually get the injury because look, Dillard, yes, you could say he's a first round draft pick, but I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know really what that guy has. And what am I supposed to go think that Jack Driscoll or Josh Sills are going to do anything for me if there's injuries? This is an elite offensive line unit, but that's because they've been able to stay together all year.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why. If you said, "Hey, Dave, what's one reason why Philly's in the Super Bowl?" I'm saying it's the offensive line before I'm talking about Jalen Hurts, and I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I mean, we loved him when he came out of Oklahoma from in 2020. We had him graded as a first rounder, like one of the top quarterbacks in that class. But I respect his game a lot. He's a unique player, but he's not having this year without that offensive line. And if they want to stay on top, I agree. They're going to have to probably find Sumalo's replacement at right guard and then draft at least one more backup that you might need next year or the year after, right? Not just a depth piece, a guy that you think can start on that team. So, I think the same way about the defensive line. I mean, I think over half these guys are free agents next year, and they know that the reason why they're so good on defense, especially late in games, is they
Oh
rotate
yeah.
as much as anything.
Yep.
They're 8 deep, and if you're looking at who's the free agents are, I mean, they're going to be 4 deep after the Super Bowl, and yes, they'll probably bring back at least one or two of them, but they're not bringing back the other two. So I think we're going to see a very traditional Howie Roseman draft this year. I think we're going to see them go
Offensive line and
double up.
defensive line.
Yep. I think we're just going to see them double up there, and I do think there's a need for another receiver.
Yes.
It's a sneaky need there. You see Devontae Smith, you say AJ Brown, but there's nothing.
That's all they got
behind those guys.
Yep. And again, they stayed healthy. They needed to.
Yeah. Right.
They've got one tight end. He got hurt a little bit, but he's back, so he's healthy.
Yep.
So very fortunate. This is a team that is where they are because they are. Look, we're not taking anything away with how they've been built. It was a great job by Howie Roseman putting this team together, but they were very fortunate with injuries, and they've had some, but they got the guys back at the right time, whether it's quarterback, tight end, or whatever the case may be, and we'll see how they work it out in the offseason. So, it's going to be very interesting. It's just I agree with you, though, at this point in the time because it's way too early. Just go with the easy guesses based on this GM, and that's the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, look at that. You got Brandon Graham and Dominican Sue, Fletcher Cox, Linval Joseph, and Robert Quinn. I mean, all those guys are about a year or two away from retiring.
Yeah.
Even Fletcher Cox is starting. He's on the downhill.
Yeah, he's not what he was. I think Hargrave's the better player.
Yes, right now he is. Yes, and then Jordan Davis. That was a great pick last year. That was the Saint trade pick.
That was the Saints trade pick. Yeah.
Where was that picked? Overall,
that was. I want to say I have it on my ticker right now. Scrolling down to it.
13th.
Yeah, it was top 15. Yeah, 13th pick. Yep.
So they got him 13. And what was that?
He didn't play a ton this year. I mean, he didn't play a lot at Georgia either, but fortunately because of lack of injuries, I know he suffered an injury himself, but he didn't have to play a ton this year. So that question still remains on him that I had coming out of Georgia. How much can he play per week? Because he was on the field for 30% of the snaps at Georgia. He never played more than that. So, that's just like if you do lose a couple of these tackles and then Davis is the guy you want to put in there and he's only a 30%, 40% snap guy, you have to get another interior tackle.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they because I'm not sure with the again, not that it's relevant, but I know the deal with the with the Saints. The Saints, what did the Saints get out of it? Was that the Saints being able to get Olave?
Yeah, that was part of the Olave trade, I believe.
Because I'm not sure. I don't remember if the Eagles stayed where they were or they had to move, and then
there were a couple of trades.
Yeah, there were so many things that were going on.
Yeah, I just know that the Eagles ripped them off. They kind of caught them with their pants down.
All right, so that wraps up our early team needs for the NFL draft. Again, like I said, we're going to do this again in late March, early April. Our next show will not be until, is that going to be the second week of February?
Yeah, it will not be next week.
Well, this week's the first week of February.
This week. Right. I think we were going to do the mock draft next week.
Is that on a Monday, maybe?
A Monday or Tuesday, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's our next show.
A little bit of a hiatus.
It's our mock draft show. And then after that, what did we say? What was after that again?
I think we're still kind of that we're going to a little bit of a hiatus for a couple of weeks. That's where I kind of like.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Go into a dark room and write, hundreds of scouting reports.
Yeah.
So, but when I come out, I'll have everything ready to rock.
Yes, and the draft guide, we'll start talking about, we'll start pushing the draft guide again real soon. So that will be available early April. And we will, I forget how many, I've got 11 teams in the draft guide. How many do you have?
I think I have 15.
15?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, especially just like we talked about with free agency and stuff, it's very hard. It's a little balancing act you have to do where you kind of got to wait until the first week of
Yeah.
the free agency, but that only kind of gives you a week.
It's stressful. It's always when it comes to the draft stuff, it's always the most stressful. It's like a really intense, like 8 to 10 day period. So I do as much as I can prior to, but again, it doesn't matter until you know who they're signing and who they're not.
It's a fun stress, though.
It's the best stress in the world.
Yes, and again, that's going to be, and we will have. By the way, these needs reports will be available on the depth charts as well at our lads.
Yep.
So check that out. But the mock draft show will be one of, I believe, 4 or 5 mock drafts we're going to have. And we will do a live mock draft. We haven't decided. It might be our last one. Could be the one that we do the week of the NFL draft. But we're going to do at least one live mock draft. We'll obviously let you guys know exactly when we're going to do that. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss any of these draft shows. Because again, Dave's going to be a hit or miss for the next couple of weeks. We do have the mock draft coming up, but I've got so much editing to do on all these shows that we've done, so we'll have more than enough content for the next few weeks while you're on hiatus. That people will not be jonesing for content here on our draft coverage. So appreciate it as always, Dave. Enjoy your trip out to Arizona with the Shonkas.
Yep.
And we'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Thank you, Greg.